All right, I got to take a look at the Blue Beetle um, teaser trailer. I think, yeah, usually you get a teaser first, and then a longer trailer later. And for those of you who are aware of my son, Mr. Nailsin Sunday Comics, where I read public domain comic books, the Blue Beetle is a regular feature and probably my favorite of the batch. This would be the original Blue Beetle, his original form, because the Dan Garrett was the original character and changed quite a bit. Started off as a ripoff of the Green Hornet, and then they quickly put him in a spandex suit, or tights, what have you, and all that. And then, of course, the most popular, the one who really brought it to the forefront, was the Ted Kord version, designed by Steve Ditko of Spider-Man fame. And he basically made him sort of a combination between Spider-Man and Batman, where the Ted Kord version didn't have superpowers, unlike Dan Garrett. But he had all these gadgets and things, and he had a flying bug mobile and stuff like that. But he looked like Peter Parker. I mean, it was Steve Ditko. I mean, he left Marvel and he got this gig and redesigned him into this character. And so he had some of those elements between the two. And then eventually got bought by DC and was brought into DC Comics. Became the inspiration for the Night Owl character in Watchmen. These were the Carlton characters of the publishing company that brought them out. And that was what his character is probably more famous for, having been the inspiration for Night Owl in the Watchmen. And then garnered some amount of popularity as being a buddy to Booster Gold, and they would get into these comedic hijinks and stuff. So after that, really, Blue Beetle was a bit of a comical character. But eventually they killed him off. And he got replaced by a third Blue Beetle. And that's the one who's getting the movie here, and that is Jaime Reyes. And they connect it with this scarab that's an alien artifact that grants him superpowers, even though his powers are far more impressive than what Dan Garrett had. So I never really looked into it. I kind of glanced and skimmed some of this stuff of Blue Beetle stories as far as Jaime goes. I've read a couple of his comics, but I don't know if they went deep into the differences between the Dan Garrett version and his. Is like, because Dan Garrett didn't have this suit come out of his back and everything the way that it does for Jaime. And I believe, as the story goes, that the Jaime Reyes version is the actual version, because there's Blue Beetle people all over the universe and stuff, and there's some sort of how do you put it, adversity between the Blue Beetles and the Green Lanterns and that sort of thing, and perhaps that could play into a DCU going forward. The simple aspect of the Blue Beetle film, it's a DCEU film. But since it's pretty much set up as its own thing, it could easily be folded into their new direction, provided the film does well, and they'll continue on, and a Blue Beetle 2 will be fine without having any hang-ups from anything left over from the previous run. Perhaps there were some scenes in it. I heard rumors that he talks about the Flash and Supergirl, and that might have been a leftover from the original direction they were going to go, and they probably could easily just cut that out. So saw the images, and I wasn't overly wowed by it. I thought the special effects looked really good, and the Blue Beetle outfit that he wears, and even seeing behind the scenes shots early on while they were making it, this is the best designed superhero suit, and very loyal to the source material that I've ever seen. Well, I mean, I guess Christopher Reeve's Superman is probably the only thing close to it. But the complex nature of his suit and everything looks just like it, so that's really cool. And then the rest of it is, this is an example, and this has always been the case with Blue Beetle, and that includes Ted Kord, is that it's chasing Peter Parker, and it's an understandable reason why, because Spider-Man, is probably the most popular superhero ever, probably neck and neck with Batman. But it's understandable in a lot of characters that the young superhero, the teen superhero, even though Spider-Man was a teenage superhero for about 5 minutes, but nevertheless, that's the template they a lot of comic books would pursue. Here, the actor Zolo seems to be playing a little bit older than the original story, but his whole family's involved, and they pretty much show the whole transformation of him right there, and it happens right in front of his family. So they're all in, whether they like it or not. And that's kind of the tagline. He's a superhero, whether he likes it or not. So I'm guessing he's not going to like it very much, but he's kind of forced into it. And has to learn what this thing is and all of that. And that's fine and all. But a lot of elements of Spider-Man, even from the films, is there. And plus the Iron Man element is very similar, and especially how MCU introduced their version of Spider-Man into it, where he becomes this fan of Iron Man, and all this super duper technology at his disposal. Whereas here, Jaime doesn't have that previous superhero mentor or anything, unless there is a Ted Kord here. But he has the AI of the Beetle itself, or the Scarab rather, and all of that sort of thing. But it's the setup of it. They even show it where there's this girl he likes, of course, and she works at this, some corporate office or what have you, who are involved in this sort of technology and probably have discovered the Scarab and are trying to figure out how to make it work and back engineer it, that type of thing. But this is very reminiscent of Gwen Stacy in the Amazing Spider-Man movie, where Peter, likes her, and she's working at Oscorp, and that's where he gets bitten by the mutant spiders and all that, because they're experimenting on them. And so, same scenario here. But he gets a hold of the Scarab because of this girl, and it connects with him, and there you go. He's got the power of the Blue Beetle. And so there you are. But the interesting little Easter eggs already in the trailer, I wasn't sure we'd get. I didn't know how they would handle it. I know the villain will have something to do with the Kord family, so I don't know what the connections would be. So that's intriguing for me anyway, for someone who knows this stuff. But first of all, the whole family is riding around in Ted Kord's bug. That's his I call it Bugmobile, but it's his flying bug contraption that he made. And they're flying around in it. So I'm wondering, that's sitting around. So will there be a legacy story, backstory to this, that there were two other Blue Beetles, and now it's Jaime. He just didn't know about them, but he finds out, and it had something to do with this. And so and then you see a scene where there's two Blue Beetle costumes standing in the background on mannequins. And it's Dan Garrett and Ted Kord's outfits. The Dan Garrett one looks a little off, but that's basically the colors. Looks like Dan Garrett was packing quite the bulge. Maybe the mannequin, but the Ted Kord outfit is spot on. That's exactly the Ted Kord Blue Beetle outfit, and that's kind of cool. And I'm wondering, is there an actual narrative and story to this? And since they're in there exploring all this, I would have to assume so, especially with the bug there. I mean, how the hell does that get there? And so there must have been a Ted Kord in this universe. So that's interesting. Is he still alive? Will they meet him? I don't know, but that's the intriguing element for someone who knows the comics. Not totally. I've got quite a few Blue Beetle comics, but wasn't a big follower of it in total, so there's probably a lot of stuff I'm unaware of. But anyway, so, it's not terrible. I didn't care for the constant pop music thing. I never liked that anyway. But that kind of almost kicked me out of it. but there's stuff here that has me intrigued. As for people getting upset about the Batman is a fascist thing, I just took it that that's the character that George Lopez is playing, He looks kind of like he's this hippie guy. And so it's the sort of thing he would probably say about it. It doesn't appear that Jaime Reyes thinks that way. He's just kind of checking out all the tech and whatnot and says, yeah, that's kind of like Batman. And that's, but he lives in that universe. That's why he would say it. And originally this was supposed to be, the DCEU. There's going to be a Batman in the DCU. So however you want to look at it, that's the Batman he's referring to. And Batman being called a fascist has been a common thing in the comics. It goes all, even in Dark Knight they did it and stuff like that. To take that as a big deal, I understand where people are coming from based on the past 10 years of our woke era. And that's a continuing problem, which, even if the woke era is over, and signs saying it is, and years down the road we'll be able to look back and have hindsight 2020 and see exactly when it ended, that kind of thing. But even so, the damage done and the radioactivity it leaves behind will linger to the point that people will call out things woke when they really aren't. And that's going to happen. And in this case, it's just a very quick teaser. I don't think that's enough to immediately, lose one's mind over it. But it's just a character's opinion on it. I don't agree with him. But, it is what it is. I don't think that's enough to say, well, this is dead on arrival for that and that alone. It's probably not going to do well. This is not a character most people know. And that's unfortunate. So it's a tough battle for it. But maybe it will. I don't know. But if it does well enough, I would have said like the first Shazam film, then maybe they'll do another one. It's just this. But yeah, there's a lot of things going against it. The Shazam film, I think a lot was hurt by the fact that DCEU is over, so there's no point in watching it and that sort of thing. Plus, Shazam Fear of the Gods wasn't as good as the first one. I'll have to give my review on that one. Sorry, a little late. But anyway, but in the case of Blue Beetle, with the idea that, none of these movies matter because the universe is coming to an end with Aquaman or whatever. Well, but they've already admitted that the Blue Beetle could easily fit right in, so it's not all that consequential to this character. So they could continue on with the same actor, same cast, and be fine. So it's got that going for it. So I'm intrigued by the little Easter egg stuff. The effects look really good, which is kind of a rarity these days. And so I will give it a shot, but it could go either way. So anyway, there you are, the Blue Beetle.